I want to tell you about safety with Xacto Blades. We're going to be using them this year quite a bit from time to time and very soon in our next project. So this is an Xacto knife. It has a very sharp blade, and you can see that it's sharp from the base of the blade all the way down to the tip, and the point of the blade, which is mostly where we work, is very, very sharp as well. So safety is a key issue with these. The first thing, the blade is attached to a handle that needs to be tight so that the blade doesn't fall out. The first thing you need to know about safety is how do you get it from the front of the classroom where they're kept back to your table when you're working. The most important thing to remember when carrying the Xacto Blade is to always carry it with the blade pointed down, so that as you're moving across the room, if someone were to get up suddenly and bump into you, you wouldn't accidentally stab them or yourself. So that's really important to note, that if your blade is pointed down, some accident is not going to happen. That could be bad. Even better, when you're walking across the room, is that you take your Xacto knife and you rest it on this mat. Carry it along on the mat, just like this, across the room with the blade resting carefully on the mat. This mat is a self-healing mat that's meant for cutting, and it's something that we use anytime we check out a blade, we check out a mat. They work hand in hand together. So you'll get used to it's just a routine that the mat and the blade go together. You don't want to cut ever directly on a table. You always want to use one of these. So it makes sense that, since you're going to be having both of them anyway, that you pick them up and carry them this way, and that is the safest way to move across a crowded classroom with the Xacto Blade in your hand. Okay, so when you get back to your desk, you're going to do some cutting, and we're going to be cutting out paper magazine for the first project and other types of paper later on. So when you're cutting, you're going to place the blade on the paper where you want to start. And you're going to need to hold that paper so it doesn't just move across with your blade, right? But when you hold the paper, be sure that your fingers are behind the blade, not over here in front of the blade where it could slip and cut you. That would hurt. Also, sometimes when you're cutting curves, you're moving along and you're cutting curves and you don't realize that as you've moved your blade, your fingers are now in the way. So you need to be aware all the time of where your fingers are in relation to the edge of that sharp blade, okay? Then when you're finished, you're going to take the blade, rest it lightly on the mat, and carry it back across the room like this so that there are no accidents or problems. Okay, two things that I've seen that are absolutely not acceptable with the use of an Xacto Blade is any kind of playing, messing around, goofing around with them, acting like, oh, I'm going to stab you, my friend. Anything like that takes it away from you for a period of time, at least that day and maybe more, depending on the severity of the goofing around. The other thing I don't want to see is taking the blade and stabbing it into the mat so that it just hangs there. It's bad for the blade. They break off the ends, and these are not, we need to be able to continue to have the blades working. So please don't stab them into the mat and leave them hanging there. Okay, so we want to recap, carry them safely, tip down against the mat, cut safely away from your fingers, no goofing around with them, and no stabbing them into the mats. So at the end of this, attached to this assignment is a little quiz that you can take, and once you finish that quiz, then you can go ahead and check out a knife to do the work that you need to do. Thank you.